Good morning. It's Sunday, May 12th. Thank you for joining us for News 8 this week. We recently got a chance to sit down with Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frerichs. We discussed a number of issues, mostly about getting money back into your pocket. But one issue has to do with U.S. savings bonds. Right now, there are more than $1 billion in mature unpaid bonds in Illinois and more than $225 million in Iowa. Treasurer Frerichs says he is trying to address that, among other issues. And joining us now is Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frerichs. Thank you so much for being here this week.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I read an article recently, I think you wrote it, that talked about what a state treasurer is. And I started thinking to myself, maybe people don't necessarily know what the Illinois state treasurer does because, to your point, it might look a little different.
It looks different in different states. If you've seen one state treasurer, you've seen one state treasurer. We're all different. We're all the chief investment officers for states. But in my case, we also have a consumer protection office and unclaimed property. We help families save for college or for retirement. We issue some grants to charities. We all do a variety of different things.
How much success has your office had in doing essentially what it needs to do and making the state money?
Well, so last year we brought in about $1.3 billion to the state of Illinois. That's $1.25 billion they don't have to raise in taxes, or $1.25 billion that they don't have to make cuts and for things like our schools or our universities or roads and bridges. So we take that part of our job very seriously.
Okay, you talked about college savings. There's a bill that you're supporting here that deals with the unused college savings. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm in charge of college savings plans. It's something very important to me. I was the first generation of my family to go to college, and I try to get families to save for college, and often what I hear is, well, I don't know if we want to save so much. What if my kid doesn't go to college? Well, if your kid doesn't go to college or your kid gets a scholarship, now the federal government will allow you to roll unused money into an IRA. State statute doesn't allow that. We're looking to change that, to take away just one other excuse for families to stop saving or to stop from saving for college.
How much success do you think that will have in terms of getting passed?
Well, we're hopeful. We don't file something if we think it's going to lose, but we also know that it's a long process, and we're getting out and talking to constituents around the state, and people have said, that sounds like a good idea. People are worried, can I afford to send my kids to college? Can I afford to retire? This is a bill that deals with two major anxieties.
Let's talk about helping nonprofits and a bill that essentially will help them pool their resources. Is that right?
Yeah. So right now, we help local units of government, counties, cities, towns, school boards, save and invest their money in a way that gets them a higher rate of return than they could elsewhere. Last year, our Illinois funds, our pooled local government funds, made nearly $1 billion for local units of government. And that's $1 billion that doesn't have to be raised in property taxes. Some nonprofits, some charities reached out to us and said, why can't we be part of that? Well, the state legislation doesn't allow them, but we're pushing a bill that would allow us to help nonprofits, charities, invest their money and make more. Because we know that every dollar we can put back into our local charities' pockets, they can help more people who are experiencing hunger or homelessness. They can help with job and skill training to help people get the careers they need. We in the Treasurer's Office are invested in the state and want to be partners for a lot of these good volunteers.
You said nonprofits reached out to you. Is this where you get some of your ideas? Do people just come to you and say, hey, could you help us with this?
That's where I get a lot of my ideas. People give me credit. We've transformed this office and are doing things differently. And people say, well, you have really a lot of good ideas. What I have is a couple of good pair of ears. I listen to people, I travel around, and when I hear a good idea, we work to implement it. Sometimes state statute doesn't allow us, but I previously served in the state Senate. So I know how to pass legislation, and we ask for that authority to help more people. We like to say that we give people the tools they need to invest in themselves.
Okay, let's talk about U.S. savings bonds. This was really interesting to me because I didn't realize just how many are out there, essentially unclaimed. They're decades old.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that and talk specifically about what group of individuals and why are potentially more affected by this?
Yeah. So this is something important for us because we're in charge of unclaimed property, returning money that's being held by a financial institution or a corporation that doesn't belong to them. Well, the federal government is sitting on about $30 billion in uncashed federal savings bonds. It's estimated about $1 billion in the state of Illinois. This is people who were investing for their future, or maybe grandparents or aunts who wanted to give a present for a baptism or a confirmation or a graduation or something of the sort. The bond is a promise to pay at a future date. And we want to make sure the federal government is honoring that promise by paying out. Sometimes it seems like the federal government wants to hold on to this money to help with federal debt, but I've never met a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle who bought a bond for someone because they wanted to help the federal government. They did it because there's someone important in their lives, and we want to help the federal government keep that promise.
And so what would this legislation do in terms of getting that money back to people it's owed to?
Well, we've been working with Congress for years on this. We finally got legislation passed that says that the U.S. Treasury has to work with state unclaimed property departments to return these bond proceeds. But the Treasury is putting forward rules that make it really difficult for us to do that. So we're calling on people to reach out to the members of Congress, to reach out to the Treasury Department and say, do the right thing. You know who these bonds are owed to. Let's make sure they get the money that belongs to them.
Because they're the only ones who know essentially who owns them, right?
Yeah. And so the federal government says they'll turn information over to us, but we can't make that information available online. Well, if you can't make that information available, how are people going to find out?
How do they
that,
search?
Yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid getting a savings bond. I remember being told, here's $50. And I thought that was great, but you have to wait 15 years until you can cash it. Maybe my aunt wanted to teach me patience.
Right.
But unfortunately, what happened is that bond was put aside in a drawer or in a folder somewhere and forgotten. It was lost or misplaced during a move. That's not just a story for me, that's a story for thousands and thousands of Americans. And we want to make sure that that promise of future payment is honored by the U.S. government.
Did that affect the black community more?
It did, because back in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, African Americans didn't have equal access to the banking system. And so a lot of African American families would invest in U.S. savings bonds. The federal government didn't discriminate in selling of bonds, but unfortunately now, a lot of those families who maybe lost those physical papers are unable to get the money that they invested and they expected to have in the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. State Treasurer, thank you so much for taking the time this week to chat with us.
Thank you very much.
Still ahead on this week, starting and running a business can feel like a daunting task.
We always hear, hey, you're the best kept secret. Well, we're not trying to keep it a secret.
So we'll tell you about the resources available through Iowa Small Business Development Center that can help you navigate a complicated world. That's just ahead on News 8 this week.